Jay Watson raped you. You think I forgot? How could I? This entire trial has been an exercise in reminding me.
And this is your chance to do something about it.
I am going to. Believe me. Because I can. I can afford therapy. I have that luxury. And maybe one day I'll be okay. But if that teenager goes to prison, he may not be. Ever.
In this round, here's Quanell X.
Charles, I really just watched a clip of the most disgraceful television program, one of the most disgraceful I've ever seen, to suggest law and disorder should be ashamed of themselves. In fact, whoever wrote this should be fired. The producers should be fired. It is an absolute disgrace. Nowhere in the history has a white woman ever been raped by a black man seriously or even allegedly, to where that white woman felt so compelled that she had white privilege that this black man or black youth should not be tried. In fact, I would say to law and order, you jackasses, this is not a subject to even play with. You know how many black men have been lynched in this country, murdered in this country, just off the basis of a lie of supposedly raping a white woman? In Rosewood, Florida, that same lie was told. Black men raped a white woman. They killed the whole black neighborhood, men, women, children, and babies. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, the same lie. We just had a movie produced about Emmett Till and how he was lynched and murdered for just whistling at a white woman, flirting with a white woman. And Law and Order had the nerve to produce an episode with such a goddamn lie about a white woman refusing to prosecute a black teenager who raped her because she has white privilege and resources that allows her to get therapy and help. This is a disgrace. That's an absolute lie.
Well, but I mean, you talk about the horrible past of American history, where absolutely that black accused, not guilty and guilty, were subjected to extrajudicial lynchings, terror, and then just black people around them, right? Horrible, in a disgrace. But we're not talking about, I mean, I know you want to, but we're not talking about 80 or 90 years ago. We're talking about 2020s America. And in fact, this is a widespread belief in far left, white, liberal progressivism that you shouldn't have people prosecuted for crime, even violent crime, black offenders, because they didn't experience privilege. And the problem with that math, right, is that one, this assumption that every white person is born with some sort of obligation or guilt just because of the color of their skin. It's a disgusting thought, right? It just be, you know, the suggestion that every white person is privileged no matter what their economic background. There are people that would argue a black child born into a rich family is less privileged than a white child born into Kentucky. There's a county in Kentucky that is the poorest in America, and it's 99% white, right? It's insane. But it's this new bigotry of this moment in American history. And the new bigotry is directed at, hey, like you do, like just in the last segment, when you were talking about white folk generally. If I were to talk about black people generally, one, I wouldn't do it because it's disgusting bigotry, but you do it constantly and there's no consequence to you because you're a bigot, but you're allowed to be a bigot. Oh, okay, yes, you spoke fact. When you speak about any
historical
group,
and present facts.
When you speak about any group that is defined only by an immutable characteristic, whether it's the color of their skin, whether it's their religion, whether it's their family status, whether it's anything that people are born into that they can't change, or a group like religion you're typically born into as well, that is just bigotry. And it's got to the point where the empowerment theory, when the 50s and the 60s and 70s, it made sense. It no longer makes sense
Charles,
in America.
but I'm not talking about
you're
that, Charles.
being a racist.
Right now it's
and
still happening, Charles.
Law and order is being racist. What's happening in America right now is
That
white
is
people
being racist.
are being fed the lie
what about the Central
that
Park
they
jogger?
should be treated differently.
The Central Park jogger wasn't 80, 90 years ago.
Okay, the Central Park jogger. Would you like
and
to
those
talk about
young
that?
men were falsely convicted on the basis of a lie.
Those young men, I know you just watched the Netflix movie and thought it was real. Those young men were accused and convicted wrongfully of committing a sexual assault that DNA proved other people did, that another man did. Now there is some question, because it was the old administration with New York that settled it. There were a great number of people that questioned because the fact there were confessions of involvement, there were confessions of those
Those-
exact
and
men,
how were they?
of those
They were
exact men,
forced
hold on,
confessions,
of those exact
which
men
was
that-
common
that
practice
night
in America
where
at that time.
There was they called it wilding back then, but it was a night of violence where young black youths were going through Central Park and attacking and beating strangers up. And
Allegedly.
no, that happened.
That ain't no fact.
No, that actually is a
Let
fact.
me tell you something about black
right?
folk. They know better in New York than to take your behind in Central Park committing crimes like that.
Okay.
In numbers, no.
I get that
As a
you
fad,
I get
no.
that you just want to lie.
That's
But the
BS,
truth
Charles.
is, all of those gentlemen were involved in crime that night, violent crime. They just weren't involved in this rape.
And they were convicted for
possibly.
it.
Okay, right. And
What
I think
about
that's
right-
wrong.
what about in
but again,
Texas?
that was in the late 80s.
What about in Houston, Texas?
Okay, but
Josiah
what-
Sutton.
Okay.
Josiah Sutton did 5 years.
I get that you want to talk
Just
about
because a white girl
anecdotes,
said he looked
and-
like the man who raped her
there
and did 5 years.
in fact, sexual assault is the...
And that was in the
Okay.
90s.
So again, sexual assault is the crime that most people are wrongfully convicted, although outcries, dishonest outcries, are probably between 6 and 2%. They're very rare, but they do absolutely occur, and people are absolutely wrongfully convicted, and that's horrible. It happens to white people, it happens to black people, it happens to all people.
What
If a
about
woman
Kobe
accuses-
Bryant?
If a woman accuses...
What
yeah.
about Kobe
Oh,
Bryant?
It's
That
horrible.
wasn't 80 to 90 years ago.
Again, that was a horrible,
Come on, man.
horrible money-grabbing
I'll
allegation.
call the roll on you, brother.
Well, Justice Prevett, I know you want to call the roll, and I know you want to talk about yesteryear because you don't want to talk about today.
Shows
but
this is
today,
recent stuff.
white people are being told. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went on TV and said, oh no, this looting is okay because they're just trying to feed their children. They called it mostly peaceful protests, right? Where we saw violent protests where black businesses were robbed and burned out, where black neighborhoods were destroyed, and the cops stood there and did not a damn thing under this dishonest, false narrative. And just like this, if someone commits a rape, they need to have a consequence. It's not a crime about sex, it's a crime about violence. And I don't care if the victim is a white woman, a black woman, a gay man, or whoever it is.
But this is an absolute BS story. We know this ain't happening in America.
It is happening. It is.
Well, white
They take this
women don't want to prosecute because they got white privilege.
Yes, it's a
You out
discussion
your
point.
damn mind.
It is happening
So
all over
white
liberal
women
white
letting
America.
black men get
It
away
is-
with
it is-
crimes
it is-
because they're afraid they got
these
white privilege.
Stupid far left. I'm a centrist. I don't like Republicans. I don't like Democrats, but I don't like extremists, right? And what you have is these far left progressives pushing this notion of that
I
privilege.
believe some
that
liberal,
privilege-
some liberal
that-
throwed off
you know-
white
you know
person
what?
wrote this.
Right? Oh no, no doubt.
No doubt. I believe
this
that.
is white liberal stupidity. So.